popular memory of the summer of 1940, the Battle of Britain takes centre stage.
This is the second week of my 20,000-mile journey around Europe to explore strange new worlds and new civilizations, to boldly go in an e-type. We start tonight in Belgium, which we always think is a bit boring. A country famous only for having the brightest streetlights in the world. They're so bright, apparently, astronauts say you can see them from space. Well, wow. Even Belgians think Belgium's boring. In a recent survey, 60% said they wish they'd been born somewhere else. But how big a number of attempts to cheer the Belgians up? I mean, this CD was released a couple of years ago. Top 10 here. Let me play it for you. Here we go. It's great to be a Belgian. I'm not English, I'm not French, and I'm not Dutch. I'm not Spanish, Portuguese, or German. I'm a Belgian, so thank you very much. Well, we just heard that 60% of Belgians wish they'd been born somewhere else. You do? Where would you like to have been born? America. Really? Yeah. America's a terrible place. Or Australia. Which country would you like to have been born in? Italy. Italy? Italy? Italy's pretty popular.
That's the greatest country in the world.
Really?
To live in.
To live in? Oh, brilliant. Finally found a happy Belgian. What's good about being a Belgian?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Is it better to be a penguin or a Belgian?
Oh, there's a penguin.
A penguin?
Penguin. Yeah. Yeah, penguin. Yeah.
There are lots of things in Italy. So to find out if Belgium's as dull as everyone says, I thought I'd look at some Belgian stories. Good afternoon and welcome to the historic lace-making city of Nicholas, where the 2001 Open Fireplace World Pipe Smoking Championships are about to begin.
Jongens, zijn jullie klaar?
The rules are simple. You get 2 minutes to load your pipe with 3 grams of tobacco, and then you see who can keep it alive. The red rule is
Stop.
it's loaded. Then you get 2 matches and 1 minute. Give your pipe away.
Big.
They're off. They're off. Usually can't sort this. People have been in training for this for 20, 30 years. Some of them have not even had time to shave in that time. This is world-class smoking. You simply won't find a better qualified bunch of men and women. How's it going? I'm my own record. Tonight's invention has been used as a weapon of war and a weapon of peace. It's taken men to the edge of space, it's ruined the economy of scariness, and it's made your lunch a lot more interesting. Most of all, though, it's what we hear. So a round of applause then for the noisiest invention of them all, the jet. was a big place, but now it's tiny. It took me longer to drive the other day from Manchester to London than it takes to drive from London to New York. I am about to embark on a journey right around the world. I'm not Michael Palin. I'm not going to take 80 days about it. I'm going to do it in 5. Yep, it's been decided that the best way to do the jet is to fly me 25,000 miles round the world in just over 120 hours. I'm not sure that this kind of insane schedule is what our forebears had in mind when they first dreamed of taking to the air. Escaping the Earth by flying like the birds is one of the oldest human fantasies. It looks easy, but it isn't. If a seagull can manage it, then surely a human could with all that power and intellect. Clearly not. The fact is that man-powered flight is simply never going to happen. For one thing, our hearts would have to flash away at 800 beats per minute. We just aren't natural flyers. Sorry. I'm not looking forward to this. It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm in a bad temper, and they have just given me my schedule. Hand on heart, first time I've seen it. London, New York. New York, Los Angeles, in fact, low, with a passion. Los Angeles to Tahiti. Tahiti. Things are looking up. Tahiti to... We're going to somewhere called... And then to Auckland. Old girlfriend of mine lives there. She's looking up again. Auckland to Sydney. Ghastly place. Full of Australians. Sydney to Singapore. Singapore to London. And that's 55 hours of DBT. Rubbish food. Quite a lot of it in America. And back. And then into Sydney again. But before all that, the first leg of my journey, the train to Heathrow. Before planes, trains brought mass transport to Britain. In 1841, you used to be able to go to places as lofty as Loughborough. But you try catching a train to There were no powered planes, leave alone jets, until 1903. When the Wright brothers abandoned flying in favour of engines, it was a good thing. Wilbur and Orville's machine actually flew, only for a quarter of a mile in 4 hogs, but it didn't matter. Powered flight had begun. It wasn't until 1919 that the first passenger service started between London and Paris. It cost £21. It took 2.5 hours, and it wasn't equally comfortable since you were flying in a convertible. An ex-RAF bomber with 2 seats and no roof. Nor was it very successful. It was half empty, taking just 1 passenger. The got larger and less al fresco, but still relatively slow and comparatively expensive. In 1939, when Pan Am started transatlantic flights, they charged £200 a ticket, around £3,000 in today's money. And for your £3,000, you got a 24-hour flight and no guarantees. With their hundreds of moving parts, engines often broke down. One early flight was 120 hours late. Oh, those were the days. Hi. Thanks, I'm flying to here.
And you have the best check on the day?
Terminal 4 Heathrow, my ultimate destination. Just 5 days to go.
Upstairs window seat would be brilliant. And preferably not next to anyone who's fat.
Okay, I'll give you that.
And this is to New York.
Where's gate 1?
Gate 1 is
These are the gate 1.
1A.
Because I've never flown, ever, in 20 years, from gate 1. Ever.
So you have to wait another year, maybe, to travel through gate
Right, so this is gate
It's gate
274,000.
number 20. Thank you.
Now, the chess, of course, is a British invention, something we can be proud of, something we gave to the world. Trouble is, we really did give it to the world. We invented it, and we gave it away for nothing. Just 25 years after the Wright brothers had stumbled into the sky, a young man called Frank Whittle came up with the idea for the jet engine. It would become his life's work, but achieving his dream would also destroy him. Invention and chasing dreams was in his blood. Frank's father was an engineer with a penchant for perpetual motion machines. Whittle's obsession with flight began at the age of 9. An aeroplane with engine trouble made a forced landing near his home. Frank was fascinated. He became so absorbed he didn't even notice the pilot preparing to take off again, and avoided decapitation by inches. But he was hooked. Desperate to be a pilot, he applied to join the RAF, but he was turned down because he was too short. Luckily for the world, 6 months later, when he tried again, young Frank was shot up to entry-level pilot for Fight Book 3. Then, age 16, the image of Whittle was installed as an apprentice at RAF. He soon had a reputation as a brilliant pilot and a daredevil stunt performer, as the top brass preferred to call it. But Whittle was not simply an entertaining fire. In 1928, when he was just 21, he wrote a paper entitled Future Development in Aircraft Design.
Yes.
Dull title, brilliant idea.
75% air superiority reached. 45 nuclear bombs in my arsenal.
At the time, the Nazi
You ready for this?
was just 150.
I'm going to nuke
Whittle was suggesting a ban
You can do it.
everyone.
in favor of something.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Whether the
6,
With a jet, you don't have any of them. You don't have any empty. Then pushes a button, lots of noise, you go 500 miles an hour. Personally, I think it's witchcraft. Fortunately, however, we don't need more about physics.
yeah, we've got 14 checks there.
Whittle. Welcome.
Holy
And in September
shit.
1929,
Yes, I go to the country.
of the Air Ministry laboratory.
Now, attack through it.
Is that?
That's my army now. So
Oh, what country is that? Where is that? America.
Spain,
Spain.
but that's German and Italian, and all Americans.
That's crazy.
Very well.
Hmm.
Griffith almost certainly understood what Whittle was going on about, but he saw Whittle's ideas as a threat.
The air enters here and is squeezed by the compressor. Then, fuel is poured into the combustion chamber and mixed
Way
with
too
compressed
many
air.
tools needed.
The burning mixture starts 800 degrees, exits out the back, and creates plenty of thrust. At the same time, hot gas stings the turbine blades, which are linked to the compressor. There's the problem, you see. Doesn't think however the world can withstand the kind of temperature you'll have in that turbine. Things will simply melt. I'm sure suitable alloys can be developed, but must have been written before. How fast will they go? The engine any plane today, 500 miles per hour is in easy reach. If you look at my calculations, you made a mistake.
The thrust of the jet will be what you estimated. So even if the engine could be built, it would never get itself off the ground. Never mind, trying to change 500 miles an hour.
Sir, I believe in the jet engine.
I'm sure you do, Whittle. It's potentially impractical. The was working on his own version, but his version still had a propeller. He was only halfway there. The result was, though, that Whittle was not given any government backing to develop his idea. But he was determined, so he found himself some private backers who got the jet patented. In 1936, he set up a company to develop the jet. But it was by now 7 years since he first put forward the idea, years in which his patents and the details were freely available to everyone. The first successful jet-powered flight took place in 1939, but Whittle wasn't involved. The world teetered on the brink of the Second World War, and the world-beating new plane was German. So, the first plane ever to fly with one of these spooky engines was the Heinkel, been designed by a man called Hans von Erdey. Great. Luckily, there was one big drawback with the Heinkel HE-178. It could only fly for 6 minutes before the whole engine needed rebuilding. A brave attempt then, but not exactly a practical flying machine. Just days after von Oehen's flight, Hitler invaded Poland, and with the stakes raised, the British government finally realized jet fighters might be useful after all. Finally, Whittle had real backing. And so, 10 years after proposing the jet, a prototype was built. And just 2 years later, in 1941, a new jet plane, the Gloucester, was ready. Trials were hampered by bad weather, and many, even the test pilot, were doubtful the plane would ever get off the ground. But finally, on the evening of the 15th of May 1941 at RAF Cranwell, the first ever British jet plane clawed its way into the sky. This is the actual moment, and an amateur cameraman recorded the event, which went without a hitch. In its first 17 minutes aloft, this little Gloucester soared to 30,000 feet and baffled local residents.
I come down to my usual front garden after tea. Going along merrily and heard a whistling noise. Didn't think what it was. Looked up and saw a train coming. And I got overhead, I noticed what it was a test. Went down to and ran in the house to tell everybody. I didn't know anything about it to tell. Don't know what to believe me.
Whittle's jet plane had a top speed of 370 miles an hour, the same as the Spitfire. But soon, jet planes were able to fly almost twice as fast as their distant ancestors. The sun had been right all along, and the jet age was almost underway. If Whittle had taken a royalty on every jet engine ever made, which is something really difficult to do, he could forget the Sainsbury's and the Rousings and the Duke of Westminster. He would have been rich beyond the dreams of avarice. But he gave it all away for the greater good. Or rather, the British government took it away and gave it to England. In the end, they decided to take responsibility for developing the communication world in new ways of doing, and it was a company that didn't. Wilma made a complete mess of it and put the jet engine rather predictably in its spot. Luckily for us, the Germans were just as inept. It wasn't until 1944 that they were able to produce jet-powered fighters. Too little, too late. The war was all over. The struggle to bring his jet to life had taken its toll on Whitmore. He suffered a mental breakdown and was discharged from the RAF. He died in 1996. It's 20. My quest is at an end, at the end of the tunnel. There's no light if there is my gate. Frank Whittle may no longer be around, but his invention has thrived. It is now going to whisk me across the Atlantic to New York, and then on to Los Angeles, and then quick. Looks like it's quite a port across the Pacific to Tahiti and the homeward leg through Auckland, Sydney, and via Singapore back to London. My first flight to New York will take around 7 hours. 7 hours on a plane. 7 hours. Shall I have another glass of champagne? Right, I've been on the go now for 6 hours, and I must say I'm getting serious thoughts in joining the mile hiker. I just had the stupidest dream. I dreamt I'd accepted an invitation to fly around the world in 5 days. As you can probably tell, I'm bored. And that's because in my day, when I was growing up, we used to be able to get across the Atlantic in 3 hours. Now, it takes more than twice that.
Britain's aircraft industry may have a winner in the comic.
Before Concorde, there was a plane named after a heavenly body best known for falling in a huge fireball into the ground. It was a story that was hopeful. The vision was that ordinary people would benefit from the white heat from Whittle's technology.
The first commercial jet service across the Atlantic is established, and VIC are flying.
Introduced in 1952, the Comet was not only fast, quiet, and comfortable, it was very, very cool. It symbolized the dawn of a new age in passenger aviation. What fascinates me most of all, though, about those early days is the passengers. Because these guys woke up one morning and found that they could have breakfast in Saint-Tropez and lunch in St. Moritz, and then, if they wanted it, dinner in St. Albans. As a result of that, the idle rich got themselves a new name, the Jet Set. We gotta get out of this place. The celebrity jet set elite, Hollywood stars like Elizabeth Taylor, knew that the jet was a perfect photo opportunity, conveying in a single image the essence of glamour and bliss. Even today, people like James Bond and Liz Hurley have used flying in first class as a way to establish their Hollywood credentials.
Now, my girl, you're so
But just as the jet set was getting started, it all went wrong.
This is the tragic scene of the Comet disaster near Calcutta. Wreckage of the aircraft is smashed almost beyond recognition.
In 1953, Britain's jet-age trailblazer started falling out of the sky. In just 13 months, 4 comets came crashing to Earth, killing 110. The problem was tragically simple. The comet had square windows, and the corners were weak points. Over time, as the plane's cabin was pressurized and depressurized for every flight, fine cracks developed around the corners of the windows, eventually becoming so big that the planes simply blew apart in midair. And that really was the end of Britain's involvement with mainstream passenger aviation. The future was to be found through the American round window. During the war, the British government had very kindly given Whittle's jet engine design to America in exchange for ammunition and equipment. And the Americans repaid us by taking over what was left of our commercial jet industry. By the late 1950s, the Comet had been redesigned, but it was too late. The Americans had cornered the market with the Boeing 707. The jet the whole world wanted to fly. Carrying 143 people at up to 600 miles an hour, it was twice as fast as propeller planes and twice as large as the Comet. It was a chap called One Trip, boss of the American airline Pan Am, who brought the first Boeing 707. Trip believed the jet would make air travel available to everyone. And one of the first places he flew his 707s from was New York, where I just arrived.
Trip was the Richard Branson of his day. He saw a world where you'd arrive at JFK with swollen feet and gritty eyes, where you'd spend 2 hours checking in for a flight and then 3 hours clearing customs. He envisaged a future where everyone was wearing a t-shirt bearing a slogan saying they'd been somewhere else.
London and New York, the world's leading financial centres, were now only 7 hours apart, and people made the journey in their thousands. The 707 was the final nail in the coffin of the piston engine. Just 9 707s could do the work of 25 propeller planes. Great. It seems the British weather has also made its way across the Atlantic.
It was the 707 that fused the twin economic giants of New York and London. And even today, they're still joined at the head. You've got 28 flights a day and 10,000 people shuttling back and forth between the two cities. I feel very at home here somehow. Much more so than I do in any other city in America. Can't think why.
You can now cross the Atlantic as quickly and as cheaply as going by train from London to Aberdeen. It's little wonder we call the Atlantic the pond.
Let me go into that's what I want to know.
It's autumn in New York. They say a week is a long time in politics, but the likes of President Kennedy realized they could make a week last longer by jetting around the world, shoving diplomacy through bombing. It was Henry Kissinger who coined the term in 1973 when he jetted between Egypt and Israel as he brokered the Middle East peace treaty after the Yom Kippur War. The trouble is that shuttle diplomacy has rarely worked. But it doesn't. He steals his jet.
Whoa!
1,000 feet in 11 seconds. Oh, it's going still there again. No, it's not going to start again, sorry.
Now I've done my fair share of flying around in funny places. Been there, done that, vomited on the t-shirt, and now look at me. I'm too fat and palsy to do it again.
Let's just go with the last chance, really. Clear up 11 times, somebody on twice.
Look at the mercy of the knot fits into this hole.
Never,
It's incredible. Sort of satisfying.
jet planes come and go, but there's one that has stood the test of time like no other.
Page 6.
The massive B-52. It was a B-52 that dropped the first hydrogen bomb on Bikini Atoll in 1956, escalating the Cold War. During the Vietnam conflict, B-52s flew 124,000 missions and dropped over 5,500 million pounds of bombs. Ultimately, they didn't change the outcome of that particular war, but they did keep it going for longer. If all the bombing by B-52s didn't change the world, then it certainly wasn't for lack of trying. Today, the Americans have just 94 of the 744 B-52s that were built. 300 were destroyed in 1991 as the superpowers retreated from one another's throats. They were chopped up in the desert in full view of Russian satellites. But although the fleet is depleted, the B-52 is still very much a fighting force. These B-52s at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, and they have been built in the early 1960s, but they're still in service. The B-52 is a truly jaw-dropping aircraft. Its wings are so heavily laden with weapons and fuel they need their own wheels. During the Cold War, the biggest bomber in the world was the iconic emblem of America's military might. Its crews on constant standby to counter the communist plot for world domination. The Reds may be gone, but the bombers are still ready, because you never know when you might need one. The B-52 was used in the recent Iraq conflict, and they're due to remain in service, astonishingly, until 2045. Right, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I can see the rain is gone. I can see all the obstacles in my way. And the main obstacle is that I'm going to spend the next 5 hours on an American airline. It's nasty food. It's bossy stewardesses. Here we see the reality of flying today. JFK in the middle of August. It's a nightmare. Very well, you have to queue. Very long time. You don't have to queue for your coffee. Travel today seems to be defeating the point of the jet. I've got a 5-hour flight to have to Los Angeles, and it's taking me 4 hours to get here again. Came all the way from the Broadway days. Ladies and gentlemen,
Train in the 60s was something you dressed up for. It was very expensive, very exclusive, and there were no queues. But for the jet to really have an impact, it needed to become something that everyone could use. Step forward Pan Am's one trip again. Trip got Boeing to design a monster, something to cope with the rising passenger demand, and they gave him the biggest commercial plane in the world. The Boeing 747.
Come closer and listen. It's the beat of my heart trying to say. My soul is looking over, let him bear back. Come closer and love me tonight. That's right.
1969 was an amazing year. Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, Britain abolished capital punishment, Louis won the Eurovision Song Contest.
What year is that?
1962.
Capital punishment, 1967. Wow. Damn. No chew.
The first ever Boeing 747 is now seeing out its days in a car park this year. Its chief designer, James Sutter, is the man who turns Trip's grand concept into a plane that can actually fly.
The airplane was designed as a favorite passenger airplane. We wanted to have the airplane for loading and unloading on the ground so we could keep the airplane in the air. We wanted two doors, and one of the doors we put on the nose of the airplane. So we had to put the cockpit above the main deck, and that's what produced sound. We had some space behind the cockpit because of the hump, and everybody wondered what to do with it. Some people thought we'd use it for crew rest. But Juan Tripp, who believed in carrying passengers and giving them the best ride he could, he decided first to use it as a dining room, but then people realized we could put paying seats up there, so it's proved to be a good economic part of the airplane.
The 747 is one of the most complex engineering projects ever completed with over 6 million moving parts. When the cabin is pressurized, the air increases weight by a whole ton. This plane is seriously huge. The Wright brothers' first flight could have been done in the economy section alone. If it were not for the fact that the wings would shear off while turning over, the 747 could, in theory, fly upside down. In the late 1960s, the 747 was not the only major aircraft project then. In Europe, Concorde was the vision of the future. Everyone thought we'd all end up flying supersonic, but today, Concorde is gathering dust while there are over 1,000 747s flying, and they're still building more. 5 hours down the line, different time zone, different temperature, different everything. Alright, it's extraordinary flight because come over the Rockies and then you've got probably 2 hours of flying over nothing. And of course, thinking up there, I don't know what to do. I was thinking, what else possess the early travelers to push west across America to keep going? So a rocky escarpment and think, no. Let's soldier on, let's get to that next rocky escarpment, and then the next rocky escarpment. There's nothing down there. Nothing. And then look what you get to on the other side. If you read about Los Angeles or saw it in a film, you'd think, oh, come on. But because of the jets, you can come here and say, yes, it is that silly. Doesn't bother me though, because I'm out here. Los Angeles is just a springboard, in fact, to my next destination. 120. 120. And down here, you go left at Utah, all the way up through Salt Lake City, along here to Denver, right at Chicago, through Texas, and there's the gate. Great. Planes like the 747 have massive wingspans, which means they have to be spaced far apart from one another, and that's what creates the long, long walks. And then when you finally make it to your 8-hour flight to the South Pacific, there's nowhere to rest your legs. The EU says that a crate carrying a meal cart has to be big enough for the animal to be able to turn around and groom itself. Now, there are lots of people who wave placards and get jolly cross saying that that's cruel. And yet, these are the same people who sit here for hour after hour to go on holiday. I'd rather do it with that I am going to spend the rest of the flight here, but no. There are a few ways in which jet travel can still be glamorous. Using contact with having your own plane would be pretty smart. But a flower from Tahiti stuck behind your ear doesn't really do it to me. I'd rather go to Skag next, to be honest. There's a third way that flying can be glamorous. At the check-in desk, get on your knees and beg, shamelessly prostitute yourself to get yourself upgraded. Look at this. Very much space, in fact, but for the first time in my life, I actually got some sleep on a plane. And when I woke up, it moved me even further forward. Sadly, there are things about sleep that never do that. It's still possible to just go to the flight deck and see how a plane works. And of course, when you leave the aircraft, you go back into the free world. Everything's possible. That's the easy. $4,000 from Tahiti is just one of many island paradises lassoed by civilization's big, shiny bird. Thanks entirely to the jet, getting away from it all has never been easier or cheaper. So cheap and easy, in fact, that Tahiti is crammed full of people getting away from it all. And to get away from them, we're off to the neighbouring, soon-to-be-ruined island paradise of which is pronounced by the locals as Of course, before the invention of the internet, people from the rest of the world did come to the island. They just got here rather more slowly.
very clever being able to get here in 21 hours from London. I'm sure Captain Cook was jolly pleased with himself when he sailed here in just 7 months. Cook arrived in Tahiti in 1768 on his way to Australia. The locals gave him and his men food and shelter, and were rewarded with syphilis. As you can imagine, this went down very badly indeed. So when Cook brought in on his way back home, they killed him. This is a breathtakingly beautiful part of the world. Mutiny on the Bounty had much to do with its crew not wanting to leave. It's only recently, though, that people other than empire builders, botanists, and mutineers have been able to experience it for themselves.
You will fly a sightseeing vessel back to
The airport here opened in 1960, about the same time the jet age started. And today, Tahiti is completely dependent on its annual delivered crop of 230,000 foreign tourists. But it's all wrong. There is an all-inclusive South Seas theme park. For a small supplement, you can swim with a dolphin in a hotel pool. It's paradise with a very small fee. Though I'm hardly taking the time to immerse myself in local culture either. Here today, gone tomorrow, not a plane to catch. It's not just tourism that has been changed by the jet. Our diets have been transformed. Not long ago, a decent meal meant going abroad. Now the jet brings abroad to us. Tuna no longer comes in tins, and mange two are available all year round. Pointless things like kumquat, starfruit, a common currency, thanks to the jet. Oh, jets carry a huge amount of frozen horse semen too, for racehorse breeders. With all those dead fish, overweight tourists, and equine sperm flying around the globe, there are lots of planes in the sky. Let me give you an idea of how many. For 3 days after the World Trade Center, all civilians banned from American airspace. And in that short period of time, the weather actually changed. The days were 1 degree hotter, and the nights were 1 degree cooler. The vapor trails from jets form artificial clouds which hold in heat and raise ground temperatures. It's certainly got the environmentalists very het up, and jet proliferation has raised underneath.
Which one are they? What?
That is a very good spot. But it isn't big enough. Collision. It happens rarely, but when it does, it's generally a news story. Like this crash in July 2002 between a Russian Tupolev and a Boeing 757 cargo plane.
So cool.
It's an even better news story, though, when it involves lots of people. Of course, dying in a plane crash is hugely spectacular, partly because of the fireball or the horror, but mostly because it's so rare. Between 1990 and 1999, British Airlines carried 700 million passengers on 7 million flights, and not one of them died in a crash. That's a whole decade, and no one was killed. According to official government statistics, you are more likely to be killed by your trousers. Time to leave Tahiti. Apparently it's 6:30 in the morning, though as far as I'm concerned it could be 12-ish. My body clock is completely broken. This is the homeward leg. There is 23 more hours of flying.
Only 11 hours or something like that.
I know this song.
Now, the good thing about Tahiti's airport is that it's really not much more than a landing strip, so there's no 25-minute stroll to the gate. All I've done in the past 3 or 4 days while on the beach is sit in a chair.
Look, this is magnetic. We just pick up random things.
My wrist hurts, my hip hurts. I've got skin like cardboard. I've got acne for the first time since I was 14. Also, I'm a middle-aged man. A bit out of shape. And so, as a result, likely that the veins in my legs will be full of lumps like space hoppers. Then there's the business of my fellow passengers who look a bit contagious. Before jet travel, it might have taken a new disease decades to cross the world. Now it takes days. It was thanks to the jet that the SARS virus became a worldwide epidemic. It started in China and then reached Hong Kong, where infected passengers boarding international flights spread the disease internationally. Worldwide panic, all down to the jet. And SARS isn't that dangerous. If a seriously bad bug like Ebola ever finds its way onto an aircraft, then we really will have something to worry about. Auckland, New Zealand, one of my favourite places on earth. An old girlfriend of mine had the good sense to move here. But there's no time to visit. We're only stopping for a couple of hours. I'm now completely bewildered. I don't know whether I want a glass of port or a plate of bacon and eggs. It was pouring with rain in New York. It was summer in Los Angeles. Now it's the middle of winter in New Zealand. And Thursday never happened. Disappeared completely. And there's another thing too. Since I left England, 4 nights have happened there. But I've only seen 3 sunsets. I have to say, of all the inventions we're looking at in this series, the jet engine is the one that the human being has just not really adapted to at all. We just can't keep up with it. Or I can't. I feel terrible. And that's it. Farewell to New Zealand, a country which I love. But I'm on my way to Australia, which I sort of don't love at all.
Why it doesn't like Australia?
Gate 1. Of course, I'm not flying from it. On this flight, I plan to see if technology can provide anything to make flying more bearable. There are a number of products on the market which are supposed to help with kind of illnesses in the jet lag. You can get on a plane. I've got this squidgy exercise thing for my feet, which keeps the circulation going. I've got an ionizer around my neck. I've got this watch around my wrist, which gives me electric shocks from time to time. And you may have noticed I've got headphones on, which are cancelling out noise from the plane. They're very good, actually. Very quiet in here. I remember this cat shining bright light in my eyes. I'm going to adjust, not so. All these things were probably invented by the Germans in the Second World War. Bright lights, sensory deprivation, electric shocks. Just giving me one last stick. We're coming in at 6, not east. Or 4th plate. Okay, alright, I did my gay. I cheated in my short time exam at Birmingham College, I'm sorry. Never got out of 10 miles a minute. immediately out the bridge. And that is the Opera House. And that means I'm in Australia now. This is the country that gave us home and away and neighbours Rolls Royce. Home to the Carnival Florida and the Box Predator. So, taxi! Airport, please.
Yo.
We're currently flying along at 38,000 feet. Things were a little closer than clock, so who hears this? Why? Why have you allowed us to go backwards? Why? Why haven't we got Concorde? We'd have been in Concorde now. I'd have been at home, playing with the kids, instead of flying along over Nizhny Novgorod, wherever the hell that is. Now Concorde is grounded, it becomes a museum piece like no other. Because unlike steam trains or Ford Mustangs, there's nothing to supersede it. We're not looking at Concorde as an example of outdated technology. It is still at the cutting edge. Losing it has been one giant leap backwards for mankind.
It's just not working.
All that size from laser stuff it's going to make this Boeing 747 look like a chicken and look nugget. Drawing its inspiration from the QE2 rather than Concorde, an Airbus A380. Well, that's going to be the first superliner of the skies. For the last 30 years, the Americans have dominated the skies with the Boeing 747. But the jumbo's supremacy is under threat from the colossal Airbus A380. The European new boy will be bigger and more economical to run than the 747. It'll carry up to 555 passengers, 150 more than the Boeing. The A380 also leaves Britain hanging on to the last sliver of the aviation industry. Its massive 45-metre wings and its engine will go in blighting. So, we've had 100 years of powered flight and 70 years of the jet, and now it seems we're stuck, building variations on the theme, waiting for the next Frank Whittle to come along and show us the way forward. Whittle's genius was to replace the hundreds of moving parts in the piston engine with just one in the jet. But the future may well depend on an engine with no moving parts at all. NASA has been experimenting with the idea of scramjets since the 1960s. The scramjet uses its own forward motion to compress and then burn fuel to create incredible thrust, flying 10 times the speed of sound. As always, there are quite a few hurdles to overcome, but the scramjet could one day allow us to travel from Sydney to London in 2 hours.
2 hours.
It's taken me 23. The jet has spread disease around the world and has been responsible for the overdevelopment of tourist destinations. Flying itself is an increasingly miserable affair with cramped conditions and now, sadly, the threat of terrorism. On the other hand, what's the point of living on a planet as rich and as diverse as ours if we can't explore it? If nothing else, the jet has given us the means to do just that. Our knowledge and understanding of other countries and cultures has come on in leaps and bounds in the past 50 years. Our horizons are now global. There are those who say that the jet has shrunk the world. But after the journey I've just done, let me assure you, it hasn't. What it's done is shown us just how big the world really is.
And next Thursday, Jeremy reveals the story of Guido, citizen and blind chance that led to the invention of the telephone. That's at the same time at 8 o'clock. So you'll listen to. T12.
Asquith was woefully unprepared for this new type of warfare. It was, at the time, the opposite of British military doctrine.
The main British force that went over to France to start fighting local British Expeditionary Force. And they were actually that meant they relied on their rifles, their accurate shooting, and their individual soldiers to fight battles. They only had 29 million artillery shells stored and ready to go. And while that sounds like a lot, that actually was only about 4 big battles by the British government's record.
But the feeling is that we will be over by that point anyway. When that doesn't happen, Britain has begun a war which really is not the position.
By the end of 1914, only 5% of the 10 billion shells shell stores soon ran dangerously low, and Britain's war factories struggled to keep up.
Before the First World War started, Britain had a fairly limited ability to produce munitions. They had a small army, they had enough production capacity to with that army, but they didn't have a lot of the ability to expand that production.
But also, well, you have to remember that Britain had a Liberal government several years before. And Liberal government didn't like spending money on war. So traditionally, the army shrinks, armament shrinks, the budgets go down.
This lack of preparedness for modern warfare was badly exposed when British High Command ordered a major offensive in front.
The British Army had planned and mounted an attack at a place called Auber's Ridge in France on 9th May 1915.
The offensive was intended to exploit Germany's diversion of troops to the eastern front. British artillery, numbering over 500 guns, was charged with knocking out German defences before the big push. The lack of munitions meant shelling would only last a mere 40 minutes.
Tens of thousands of shells are made available, but actually the number of shells is inadequate. Some of the guns are rationed 10 shells a day when they need 10 a minute, and soldiers in trenches can survive, particularly a weak barrage. Then you advance, and all the enemy does is catch your soldiers in the open with their own returning artillery fire.
The attack lasted only a day, and resulted in over 11,000 British casualties. The vast majority falling within yards of their own lines.
It was a catastrophic disaster. Commander British Army Command French complained about that to correspondent of London's Times, who was actually over with the British Expeditionary Force.
On the 14th of May 1913, the London Times led with a devastating headline.
The public and Parliament were outraged at the idea that the British soldiers didn't have the equipment they needed. They demanded answers.
It really destroys Africa's government. It does destroy the Liberal government in that you have to come forward.
The coalition would only last if it could deliver enough shells to the front to make a difference.
So what Asquith did was turn one of the youngest and most aggressive of the Liberal politicians in the country, David Lloyd George.
Lloyd George was the Chancellor of the Exchequer and had gained a reputation as an apt politician earning him the nickname the Welsh Wizard.
Lloyd George afterthought had the kind of aggressiveness and intelligence that could turn the situation.
He asked the government to pass the 1915 Munitions of War Act and created the Ministry of Munitions. David Lloyd George was appointed as First Minister. He was now in charge of all the munitions production. The coalition and the nation could only survive if the shell crisis could be fixed. His task was multi-faceted.
The stockpiles in the UK are getting absolutely diminished.
There was a desperate scramble to start creating more production, more munitions, and more factories that would create the weapons that we needed to fight the war.
To do this, Lloyd George not only had to remake an industry, but revolutionize an entire society. While, on the lines, the guns of August kept firing. On the 9th of June 1915, David Lloyd George took charge of the newly formed Ministry of Munitions. His mission was to solve Britain's shell crisis and keep the guns firing.
We have insufficient shells of the correct caliber. Many of them are shrapnel shells, which are very good against men in the open. But if the enemy are behind a trench or a dugout, well, to be honest, we might as well spit at them.
As trench warfare took hold, Germany poured in resources to secure its early advances.
German positions are so strong and so effective. I mean, they're in concrete bunkers, dozens of feet underground. So you're going to have artillery blasting them off the face of the earth.
Shrapnel shells couldn't pry the enemy from their dug-in position. British forces now had to rely on high-caliber, high-quality artillery shells to blast them out.
And very, very importantly, a lot of those shells simply don't function because they've been produced by factories at the outbreak of war were producing kitchen sinks or toys. They are not really prepared for the challenge.
Lloyd George's task was made even more difficult by Britain's lack of industrial mobilization.
The problem with Asquith's government was they felt it was not really their role to intervene in the running of companies. So they left it to the individual companies to improve their ability to produce shells as they saw fit. The result of this lack of direction is that by the spring of 1915, only 50% of the small caliber artillery shells that had been ordered had been delivered, and of anything above really 6-inch shells, about a third was actually produced and available. It was a catastrophe.
At the time, Britain's munitions industry only had 3 dedicated state-controlled war factories to supply its armed forces.
There is a gunpowder factory at Watermanor, there's a small arms factory at Enfield Lock, but the overwhelming amount of work is done at Woolwich Arsenal, and that has been Britain's premier site for artillery and munitions and armaments since the 17th century.
These war factories were supplemented by a range of private ventures. As the war progressed, demand quickly outstripped supply.
Oh, sorry. 2 and everything. 2. What?
Lloyd George in the Ministry of Munitions was to succeed. He had to move quickly.
Lloyd George ran his industry with a mixture of cunning and wisdom. The first thing he did was to call in all of the factory owners, all of the industrial producers, and start getting them to figuring out how to improve munitions production. If they didn't want to cooperate, he threatened them with serious consequences. But he also schmoozed them and made them want to cooperate. And with this combination of good cop, bad cop, he managed to get most of those factories on his side and on the side of the British war.
But the factory owners were the least of Lloyd George's problems. By 1915, Germany's advance into France had been checked, but at a terrible cost. The original expeditionary force had been virtually wiped out, suffering a monstrous 90,000 casualties. What remained was divided into two new armies, both in desperate need of professional troops.
From 1914 to at least 1916, when you get conscription, the loss of male labour was massive.
A lot of the skilled mechanics and producers who they needed in the factories were actually already on the front lines fighting.
So the only way to really replace that was to bring women into these roles.
Before the Great War, a woman's role was in the home. Jobs in society were mostly the preserve of men, and any woman in full employment was considered to be neglecting her domestic responsibilities.
The employment of women in factories is an issue at the beginning of the war with trade unions that is not to be negotiated because as well as restricting people on bringing in a less skilled person to do their job, there's also restrictions on bringing in a woman to do their job.
Trade unions have been dragging their feet about putting women into factories. If women could do it, then it wasn't a skilled job. Therefore, the wages didn't need to be as high. Therefore, men returning at the end of the war wouldn't need to be paid as much. It would have devalued the whole system.
Factory owners also believed it was the job to work.
In 1915, the government created the Battleship for women's war.
Shocking.
Women who work in the industry, nursing, and things like that. A month later, 79,000 women signed up and said we will work in industry. And this was something that Lloyd George championed because he knew that they had to have these schemes to show the women the opportunity and force the rest of the women to get these women into the factories.
It was a gamble. It paid off.
Yes, there's a yes, it is organised. It's very much like this. It's learning to go and evolving on the move. To be fair to Lloyd George, yes, he did create a more smooth running and upscale manufacturing process to get the new
New practices and techniques also boosted Britain's war factory production.
So what you have in the First World War is the advent of the assembly line.
This allows a number of relatively unskilled people carry out a process in a repetitive way, producing a linear production line, giving you results at the end.
This breakdown of skilled to semi-skilled labour was known as dilution.
Dilution is necessary because before the war, maybe it was okay to have one highly skilled guy that could do a whole process that could take 5 days to achieve one bit of output. If you suddenly need 50 times that output, you're going to find 50 of these guys? No. So what you do is you go and recruit a load of minions and you bring them in and you put them in a line. And instead of the one guy doing everything to the end of the line, he teaches each minion to do a little part of the process. So that means that you can multiply your production capacity massively without finding huge amounts of people that are as skilled as that one man who used to do the job all the way through.
The key thing is you don't need a small, tiny team of highly skilled people. You need lots of semi-skilled labor.
Trade unions were far from happy with the idea of women taking men to work for less pay. Lloyd George observed well what these grievances could spell.
Lloyd George had to worry about the people who were going to work on the assembly lines. And most important from his perspective was he had to stop the kind of strikes and general worker unrest that had so marked the British economy before 1940. The Defense of the Realm Act and other powers that Parliament actually gave them the ability to legally forbid workers from going on strike and generally to take control of the workforce in the way that he thought was effective to build conditions.
Still, to keep the unions on side, an agreement had to be reached. Women could only be trained to a semi-skilled level and must work under supervision. Lloyd George now had his labour force, but to get the factories he needed, he adopted a two-pronged approach.
Some of it relied on private industry, factories that already existed that were owned by heads of industry and could produce more than they were. But some of it also relied on increasing government production. And in this area, we started what was called the national factories, where the government actually started building its own factories, munitions, of all sorts.
International factories are a completely new innovation. This is government basically directing industry in a way that has never been seen before. Nothing like this has been attempted. Because what it's doing is basically making the needs of production subordinate to the needs of the state.
A lot of Lloyd George's tactics were kind of harsh, but one of the things you have to keep in mind is that every day out of the war becomes the Western Front. Every day Lloyd George was being reminded of how many thousands of British soldiers were being wounded and killed. And that drove him to make sure that they had the kind of equipment they needed to fight the war.
A total of 170 factories were established throughout England. One of the brand new purpose-built factories was at Farnborough, just outside of Leeds. It would go on to become one of the most productive shell factories in the whole of Britain. As the war in Europe escalated, Britain's stockpiles of ammunition were drastically reduced. Lloyd George was keep the country in the fight and fix its production shortfall. Near Leeds, one of the new generation of war factories was constructed.
Farnborough was a purpose-built factory, and it was part of the network of shell factories that came about as a result of the shell crisis.
The national filling factories were a particularly specialized kind of factory. They were responsible for essentially everything to do with making the explosive shell actually explosive.
Built on a 400-acre site, the giant war factory had its own railway system, complete with an 800-foot-long platform that allowed swift access to and from the site.
The railway line came right into the heart of the factory. It also went all the way around the factory as well. They would offload all the goods into the central sites, and they would be distributed to the different sections of the factory.
Railways were critical for the national factories, and Farnborough had its own 13-mile line which connected it to the national rail.
The national factories relied on a steady and immediate supply of raw materials. If the iron and steel didn't come in, the factories couldn't produce what they needed. And the only way to get what they needed into those national factories was through the railway.
There's no suggestion in the Great War of putting ammunition on lorries to keep a railway station. You take it straight from the workshop, but straight from the train, to the coast.
Down to the coast so that it can be put on a boat and sailed to France.
Along with the shell filling works and cartridge stores, Farnborough also housed a teaspoon for renovating cartridge cylinders, a workshop that converted empty propellant boxes into packing cases, a laundry, a garage, and it even had its own fire brigade.
Farnborough wasn't just a factory on its own, it was literally within a city.
The threat of war was never far away, and the Royal Defence Corps ran around the clock security, with workers using their IDs and carry permits.
% worked at schooling, and 130,000 women actually applied to work at that. It took on about 20,000, 20,000, 50 went down to Newcastle to be trained, and they came back and disseminated the training to the other people.
Within months, Farnborough was producing 50,000 shells a week, and each shell had one single purpose.
Munitions factories in the Great War produced projectiles, and this is just one of them. This is a standard British 4.5 inch howitzer shell. It's 4.5 inch, you can get that to the diameter of the shell. It's on. Here is the main body. Factory filled with explosives. If you actually get it going through the air to fire it, you need to have the shell cased, pre-prepared with charges. We've actually got a little percussion cap which is struck by a fire pit. That will cause our chloride to burn, explode in the weapon, forcing the propellant to actually push this projectile up the barrel. It will then, the air, the range, it will always is
detonated, which then causes all the explosions inside our shells, causing the casing to raise into fragments, hundreds, if not thousands, of red-hot, jagged pieces of steel.
Shells were assembled 24 hours a day in a 3-shift system. The demands of war meant no let-up for Barnwell workers.
Working hours were extremely long, on average 8-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts on a Sunday, just doing the same repetitive work over and over, day in, day out.
There were no holidays because these women were crucial to the war effort.
Every hour was dedicated to shell production.
You can't leave the machine without permission. If you're late in the morning, the machine is disabled and you get no money at all for that shift. So you have to be constant of what you need to do. And frankly, if you need to go to the loo, do a time you're quick enough carefully.
Full employment was ensured by high wages, far above the national living wage.
The facility pay was continuous in the week for the replant employees.
These working class women were now able to act like upper class women. They were able to buy fur coats,
Having money to spend on taxes, having money to lay.
for once they were the ones supporting their families, and they were the ones living and spending for they would have never had before.
That spending power was used freedom.
That's bullshit.
But such
No
behaviour was
teeth,
often
right?
frowned upon.
They enjoyed a lifestyle that they just never thought of having.
These working class missionaries were constantly and acting out of their normal behaviour.
There are anecdotal stories about how boisterous the girls were. It was said that if a lone man got into a carriage full of Barbary girls, he'd give some to get home. And certainly there was a story of a man who was going to York, and by the time he arrived at York, he wasn't exactly.
This newfound autonomy was sometimes ridiculed in the press.
In newspapers, there was a massive sense that munitions workers were acting above their station. Quite a lot of the time, these munitions workers in quite derogatory ways.
But good wages weren't the only reason these women took up roles in war factories.
They also felt that it could help support their men folk who were fighting in the front line. With a great sense of patriotism,
This kid is alive.
they wanted to
It's not enough. There's not enough to go around. What the
Along
fuck?
with high earnings, a number of innovations were also incorporated.
Skip this step for full whole display model. Why? Waterline display.
But to some
Ah,
extent,
fuck
they
off.
wanted to be there. There were 3 countries.
What the?
They had a medical department, a dentist, they provided leisure facilities. The management were certainly very conscious that they had to look after their workforce. Soldiers were expendable, unfortunately, but these women were not expendable because
Waterline
without the shells that they
display.
were producing, you just would not work for.
Not far from the main shell factory, a separate factory was also constructed. Its production was top secret.
One of the innovations the national factories created was a new kind of shell filling. They actually started using something called Yamato, which is a mixture of ammonium nitrate and ammonium to fill the shell they were producing. It was much more efficient, it was much more stable than the way factories.
It's usually been an 80-20% ratio. Obviously, at the Barlow factory, they were kind of experimenting to see what would make it more efficient and
Go
effective.
online and buy
The
extra
Yamato
shit.
was entirely separate to the rest of the factory, and it was also protected by